Hello guys, today we will be talking about, what if Naruto was adult? Naruto went back in time to his kid body part 1. If you enjoy this video please like and subscribe. Now let's begin. Training Tokyo Nuts prompting. Minato with some stupid dispute, about some Jinin refusing to go and find the Fire Daimo's wife Katora. Again. To be honest he complained too, but this was his day off so Minato was a bit irked. Anyway Naruto and Sasuke went without him. They had trained together, without supervision before. Well except for the Anbu who were constantly watching Naruto. Those Anbu. I have to sneak away anytime I want to do some real training. Troublesome. Damn, I'm starting to sound like Shika. Naruto thought. Naruto and Sasuke were sparring as usual. It was the favorite part of training for both of them. Plus most of the other training they didn't need a partner. Naruto never went all out on Sasuke but he always made it a pretty even fight. After learning Rasengan the other day again though, he wanted to finish it, wind element and all. So Naruto snuck away from the Anbu watching, leaving Sasuke with a slightly more powerful clone than usual so it wouldn't pop if it got hit. Naruto reached his destination quickly. It was the river where Jiraiya taught him water walking in his first life. He smiled when he got there. It was the same as the first time he saw it. He could almost imagine Jiraiya sitting by the bushes peeping on the girls in the water as he trained. Naruto shook his head. He came here for a reason, and if his dad came to check on him before he got back and realized he ditched his Anbu again, he'd be in trouble. Starting his training Naruto made 500 clones. His reserves were growing fast, and had them all grab a leaf from one of the trees around him. Then they began to try and cut them with wind chakra. After an hour Naruto had half his clones dispel. What was left of the clones started cutting leaves a minute after that. He had to get back soon now though so he dispelled the rest of his clones after about 10 more minutes. Before he dispelled the clones so they had finished mastering the leaf cutting exercise. He was learning it even faster than the first time because he already knew what to do. He just had to let his young body feel it out. Naruto knew he had to go back now, but he still had a lot of chakra. So he made as many clones as he could at once, which happened to be 500, and had them all position themselves around the waterfall. When there were too many they would climb up the wall beside the waterfall with chakra above the other clones. Then they all began trying to cut the waterfall in half with wind chakra. Naruto instructed half of them to dispel after 2 hours so the others would learn faster, as he left. Naruto got back and slipped back into the spar with Sasuke. His entrance being masked by his clones. Just in time too. Naruto thought as he saw his father coming. Scene changed. The fox clone ran all night, and kept running for 2 days only resting a few hours when it became too tired. When the fox clone arrived in front of Suna, he realized lucky for him Gaara had once shown him a secret underground way into Suna, he had found as a child. Probably would be the best idea to go through the front gates. He slipped in unnoticed. But he didn't want to just run around the whole village looking for Gaara. So where to start? Well, it's late afternoon in Shuri's no academy today in Konoha so I don't think Suna would have him in school right now either. The place I went when I was around 6 years old in my first life when there was nothing I had to do, was go to the playground. So I'll check there first. Sure enough the third playground that fox Naruto came across he smelled Gaara. He followed the sun and found Gaara sitting alone on the swing, holding a teddy bear and the kanji for love already on his young forehead. Naruto knew what that meant. Gaara's uncle had already betrayed him and Gaara had already killed. Fox Naruto felt a sharp pain in her stomach that he knew the original Naruto felt too, at seeing his friend. With that look like he was empty. And alone. That darkness Naruto had been trapped in once in the last life, and he would never forget how painful it was to be alone. Not this time. The fox Naruto thought. He won't be alone. Fox Naruto started toward Gaara slowly. Everyone kept their distance from Gaara though so no one even noticed him approaching the Jinchuriki. Gaara looked up at him when he was about 10 feet away. They were in the shadows. No one could really see them now unless they were willing to come closer to Gaara. Which they weren't. Fox Naruto raised his head when Gaara looked at him, trying to look non-threatening. Gaara got off the swing but didn't look scared as most children would to see a huge fox watching them. Not that he knew by now his sand would protect him. Gaara's face was impassive. But slightly curious too. He walked halfway to the fox Naruto and knelt down. Fox Naruto walked the rest of the way to his friend and licked the hand Gaara had held out to him. Gaara smiled slightly and petted him. "Hey, your eyes look like mine. Do you want to be my friend?" Gaara asked the fox, still looking into his eyes. Fox Naruto almost broke. His friend, despite what his uncle did, still had innocence. Fox Naruto nodded his head. Gaara looked surprised that he answered, "Do you understand me?" Fox Naruto spoke this time. "Yes, Gaara. I am a clone. My original sent me to check on you and be your friend." Gaara blinked. A few seconds passed as it looked like Gaara was thinking. "Then, you'll be my friend?" Gaara asked. The fox nodded. "Who is your original? Why did he send you?" Gaara questioned the fox as he sat on his haunches. "My original's name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, but you must tell no one. He has risked a great deal to even send me to you. He did this because he is like you, Gaara. He is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune." Gaara's eyes were wide. "You mean he is a monster too? There is someone else like me?" Gaara sounded hopeful now. "That's why your eyes look like mine." The fox Naruto though closed his eyes tight. "Gaara, you are not a monster, and neither is he. But he is like you. We are the original and you are the same age. He knew of you and wanted you to not be alone. He knows what that's like." Gaara broke it that his face was still blank, but his eyes were a little wider, and then tears overflowed and spilled out his eyes. He made no move to wipe them away or even seem to acknowledge that they were even there. "Ilukna Kilavarlu Uver, Nuni Nuliniv Uyuidu Reason Uialia Kidmitted Lusigri Ulu Datizan. Nias Dusaikas Iolner. Avild Luasite Malayan Winan Naraku. Uil. Malusti Ulu Liako is Narulu Asai, becoming full of pride. Minato carried Naruto home in his arms. They still had an hour before Sasuke showed up. So Minato laid Naruto on the couch and started cleaning, healing, and bandaging his hands. Noticing that they were already healing by themselves, Minato thought of Kyuubi. "At least you're doing something useful for him." Minato got up after bandaging Naruto's hands and got a washcloth. Minato knew that Naruto wouldn't get up in time to get a bath before Sasuke came, so he wet the washcloth and wiped the sweat off his son's face, and dirt off his arms, then brushed Naruto's shorts off. Minato sighed. That was as good as he was going to get without a bath. But Minato couldn't help but to smile as he looked at his sleeping son. 6 years old and he has already mastered my Rasengan around. It was almost lunchtime and Sasuke would be here soon. One morning. Minato thought. Then turned an hour later. Minato had just put ramen ready to eat on the table, when he heard a knock at the door. "Come on in, Sasuke." Minato called to the door. Sasuke walked in to see Naruto sleeping on the couch. He stopped near Naruto and called out to where he heard Minato yell from below. Minato walked in and, "Hey Sasuke, lunch is ready. Don't worry about Naruto, he is just a bit tired." Sasuke noticed Naruto's nose twitching. Minato saw Sasuke looking and followed his eyes smirking when he heard Naruto mumble ramen. Sasuke almost laughed at that. "Almost took his don't laugh after Ali." Minato snapped out of his freeze and let out a small laugh. "Hey, yeah, you did great," Minato said, still sounding odd. "Alright, step 2. Minato flashed away and was back in 2 seconds with a big bag of rubber balls. Pulling one out, he explained, "Step 2 is power. You have to use enough chakra to pop this rubber ball." Then Minato popped one of them, showing them how. Naruto took one of the rubber balls and started pumping chakra, and this time he didn't get it on his first try and only made a small hole in it. Minato looked at it. "Not bad, but you have to pop it like I did and make it explode. Keep trying." Minato went and sat down by a tree. Naruto was happy that his father stayed with him as he trained. Before, his teachers would always tell him what to do, then leave him to sort it out by himself. Naruto was at it for about 10 minutes before Minato heard a bang. Minato had wide eyes, then just laughed. "Way to go, Naruto." Minato called over to the now laughing Naruto. Naruto ran over to him shouting, "I did it." Minato got up smiling at Naruto. "You keep this up, you'll shatter the record for learning this jutsu." Naruto beamed at him. "What's the next step?" Naruto asked, excited. "Well, you have to combine what you've learned. You use the rotation you learn popping the balloons, and the power you use to pop the rubber ball. To make a sphere, but this time you don't pop it, you have to hold the shape to the ball." Minato explained the last step as easy as he could. This time Naruto really was listening hard. He wanted to be able to use the Rasengan with one hand and wanted to make his father proud by actually learning something and not just showing what he already knew. Naruto had been trying for hours and it was almost time to meet Sasuke. Minato was worried he was pushing Naruto too far too fast, when he saw that his son was trying so hard his hands were burned by the chakra. Minato told Naruto that he had done well and they could try tomorrow so he could take care of the burns, but Naruto just wouldn't give up. He was 6 for crying out loud. Don't most year-olds cry when they scrap their knee? Minato remembered then he still had never seen Naruto cry, ever. Naruto, we have to go in to meet Sasuke. Minato tried again to get Naruto to stop. Naruto didn't turn around but called out, okay, just one more try, I almost got it. Anita. Minato could tell he was getting close. Naruto concentrated, powering up the Rasengan slowly as he faced the tree in front of him. Then he snapped his eyes open and charged the unfortunate tree, and plowed right through it. Minato jumped up as he saw Naruto falling down from chakra exhaustion. He caught his son just before Naruto would have hit the ground. Minato laughed and flashed them home. You'll find out tomorrow, he told Naruto, ruffling his hair. So just eat your dinner and get a good night's sleep. Naruto just rolled his eyes at him, and started inhaling his non-ramen dinner. It happened to be good. Chicken with rice and veggies, not bad. Naruto thought. It was a beautiful day in Konoha, the sun was shining brightly and there was a cool breeze in the air. All was peaceful, the children were at the academe learning, and the adults were working in their shops or other jobs. It was so serene you could hear the birds chirping. Naruto Namikaze. Stop. So much for that. A 6-year-old Naruto was running across rooftops, and through alleyways while being chased by 5 Chunin and 3 Anbu. The whole time he was laughing madly. See how this all started was Naruto had been enrolled in the academe this year, and after a few months of being lectured by Iruka, well, simply put, Naruto got bored. And since Naruto is Naruto, he decided the best way to deal with this was to revive one of his most famous pranks, with extras. However, this wasn't his first prank in his new life, so all anyone had to do to figure out why 8 ninja were chasing the Hokage's son was to look up at the Hokage mountain, which had gotten a makeover. The first looked like a woman and had green eyes with red lipstick, eyeliner, blush, the whole deal. The second basically looked like a clown, white face, red nose, and a blue tear on the left side of his face. The third, old man Hokage, had a nosebleed, bugged out eyes, and his mouth hanging open like he'd just seen Naruto's sexy jutsu. The fourth, dad, had blue eyes, gray hair and a lot of wrinkles. Naruto was very proud of his masterpiece for many reasons, but the main one was that he finally figured out how to enforce the paintless chakra. So the paint would not only stay there for days no matter what you tried to take it off, only Naruto knew how, but it glowed brightly. The Anbu would never even have suspected him. Except for his reputation, and if they didn't see him half covered in paint. Yes, Naruto was sure that was why they had started chasing him. Right now though, he is a 6-year-old kid successfully staying ahead of 8 weight now 10 fully trained adult shinobi, and he was having a lot of fun doing it. Naruto sighed though it was fun. It was time to ditch them before they came up with some plan to catch him. He jumped up to a roof and immediately jumped back down to an open street, made a shadow clone which ran as soon as it was made, and he transformed into a cat. Before any of the ninja following him saw, all the Chunin and Anbu ran after his clone. Once all the ninja were out of sight, Naruto changed back and started walking. Bam! Only to walk right into someone. Naruto fell on his butt and turned his head up to glare at whoever had knocked him down. Then he noticed it was his father, who was looking down at him with a stern face and one raised eyebrow. Naruto gulped, rubbed the back of his head, and laughed nervously. Hi dad? Minato just let out his breath in a huff and picked Naruto up off the ground. They were home in a flash and Minato put Naruto down on the couch, sitting down next to him at an angle to look at him. Minato broke the silence. Do you know why so many ninja were chasing you? Naruto's mouth answered before his brain could save him. Because only a few couldn't catch me. Naruto grimaced, realizing what he said when he was already in trouble. Minato's mouth was twitching though, trying very hard not to smile at his son. I meant more why they started chasing you in the first place. And why are you covered in paint? Minato moved on, trying to get to the point. Naruto sighed. You haven't seen the Hokage monument today, have you? Naruto asked. Minato blinked confused, so Naruto just pointed at a window which had a good view on the mountain. Minato raised an eyebrow at his son, but got up and looked out the window. What could the monument have to do with holy shit? Minato thought as he looked out the window, and his mouth dropped. He really wanted to laugh at the sight, but knew that wouldn't be the most responsible thing to do. How did he make it glow like that? So he focused on the part that annoyed him. "You made me old," he stated without turning around so Naruto wouldn't see the smirk on his face. Naruto's face dropped to just look blank. "I pranked the whole village by defacing the monument, and all he can say is that I made him look old." He could hear Kyuubi on the inside laughing his ass off. Naruto tried to block him out so he wouldn't start laughing, but it was too late. He was already snickering. Minato heard his son muffle a laugh and turned around to see him almost doubled over. Minato couldn't help but smirk at his son's antics. "Naruto, what's so funny, huh?" he asked, still bemused. Naruto managed to laugh at "All you care about, ha, is I made you, ha, look old." Minato could hold it now and laughed with Naruto. After a few minutes though, "You know you're still in trouble, Naruto." Naruto started to pout at that. "But Dad, it was just a joke, come on, it's funny." Naruto whined. Minato replied, "Not for the one who has to wash it off." Naruto grumbled under his breath, "They can try." Low enough his father couldn't hear. "Besides, you also skipped class, too, dear." "Prank," Minato said. Naruto ended up being the one forced to clean the paint off the monument, and he wasn't allowed to have ramen for dinner. Naruto grumbled the whole time about not having any ramen, and that no one will get to know just how resilient his special paint was. He used a secret way to get it off when his Anbu guards weren't looking. The secret happened to be sake, so he just poured some into the soapy water bucket he was given to clean the paint off with. Minato showed up at sunset to bring Naruto home, but he wasn't done yet. "Hey Naruto!" Minato greeted him. Naruto looked up and gave him a bored look before grumbling, "Hey Dad!" Minato sighed. He didn't want Naruto upset with him, but he had to punish him somehow, even though it was funny. Minato wanted to cheer him up now, so, "Naruto, if you get done quickly I'll teach you a cool jutsu tomorrow." Naruto's head shot up, his eyes shining. "Really? Alright." Naruto stood up, made a familiar seal with his hands and shouted, "Kage Bushin no Jutsu." When the smoke cleared, there were over 200 Narutos. They began running around the monument cleaning. It was like a hurricane, but instead of leaving destruction in their wake, the Narutos left a freshly cleaned Hokage monument. Naruto was done in less than 10 minutes, and immediately turned back to his dad. "So what you gonna teach me?" Naruto asked with a smirk. Naruto and Sasuke were sparring together in the Uchiha training grounds, using only taijutsu. They were pretty even, but Sasuke had more speed and Naruto had more power. Just like always. While Naruto actually had to try, because even though he knew more, their bodies were at the same level. This was the first time in months his mind could relax. Just letting his body flow through the motions, block, duck, sweep, dodge, counter, and always keep moving. It was easy just letting everywhere he go until there was only a fight, and not even having to fight for survival. Just to fight for fun and to become strong with his friend. They sparred for hours, finally taking a break when Itachi found them. "Sasuke, dinner is ready." "Naruto, you as always are welcome to join," Itachi told him. They stopped their training and he yelled "coming," then followed Itachi to the house for dinner. Naruto, now 7 years old, has spent the last 7 months preparing for the soon-to-be Uchiha massacre, training his body in speed and strength, which the clones couldn't help speed up. Then he finally remastered the Rasenshuriken last month. Naruto had yet to try to summon the toads, though he didn't have time since his father had threatened the Anbu that if they lost him again they'd be demoted to Chunin. So it was a bit harder to shake them, but he had learned how to seal away chakra and the mark that Kyuubi had him draw on himself in blood right before they came back. The mark of the Kyuubi had stayed on him, following him literally through time. Kyuubi had said that the seal did more than help them go through time, but wouldn't say exactly what. Which did annoy Naruto, but since the fox wasn't spilling and nothing bad had happened yet, he filed it away for later. Plus the seal did disappear when he wasn't using it. And Naruto did have other things to worry about anyway. The Uchiha massacre was only 2 months away now, and Naruto has been actively spying on the Uchihas, while also eavesdropping on his father's meetings. Trying to find out if they knew of the coup yet, or if there even still was going to be one after he had changed things. Naruto had also taken to sneaking out in the middle of the night to the Hokage Tower to look through any files on the Uchiha. Today he finally found one answer when one of the clones spying on a younger Uchiha followed him to a secret meeting with another older Uchiha in the woods. The clone overheard them talking about the coup and that it was going well, and they even named a few of the co-conspirators which the original Naruto wrote down as soon as the clone proofed. Good thing he didn't skip class today or he wouldn't have had a pencil and paper ready so fast. Scene changed soon. Gaara and Kid were just outside soon playing with a ball. They were outside soon so no one would see them. Kid had used his solid transformation, that he usually used for his sexy no jutsu, to change him into his normal human form so that they could play as kids. Gaara was very happy with his friend. A week after they met, Naruto or Kid had returned just as he said he would. After that he would only come once a month because it was so far in between Suna and Konoha, which Gaara learned that was where Naruto lived, and that way they were less likely to be caught. They were playing catch right now but Naruto wanted to make it more interesting. Hey Gaara, how about we make this a little more fun? Naruto asked, waiting excited to switch up the game's rules. Okay. Gaara replied, completely oblivious of what he had just agreed to. The next time Naruto threw the ball back he made a hand seal and called out cage ball jutsu. Suddenly there wasn't one ball coming at Gaara but 10. Gaara reacted instantly, not wanting to drop the balls and lose. His hand shot out and caught them all. He smirked at Naruto under his stand that caught all the balls, and saw Naruto grinning back at him so he threw them all back. His blonde friend, instead of running to catch all the balls, made the same hand seal as before and called out cage bushin jutsu. Now there were 10 Narutos too, and each caught a ball. Gaara smiled at his friend. This game just got a lot more fun. By the time they were done they had been running around for hours chasing balls going in every direction with clones, sand, small jutsu, and even themselves. Never had so many balls been kept in the air so long by just 2 kids. They were now laying down on the ground upside down from each other panting. After a few moments Gaara spoke, Naruto, we'll be friends forever, right? He could use Naruto's name when they were outside Suna where no one could hear. Of course Gaara, we will always be friends. I think even before we met we were, like we were always meant to be friends. Because of what we are, we're kind of brothers of circumstance. Gaara looked at him with a small smile then looked down. You know I have an older brother and sister, but they're afraid of me. They don't understand. Naruto sat up inside. I know it's hard Gaara, but just keep trying. They can never really understand because they will never go through what we have, but that doesn't mean they won't ever try. Gaara sat upside and nodded. I hope so. Brother. Gaara had a small sheepish smile on his face when he looked up at Naruto. When Naruto heard the word brother he looked at Gaara and gave him a real smile that he showed few people. Me too, brother. Scene changed. Konoha. 1 month and 2 weeks later. It was late but Naruto was still up going over what he would have to do. Right now he was preparing seals that would be useful if he got in over his head. Which he always did. He had stored about 2 taels worth of his own chakra in the last couple months in the Kyuubi seal, and had level 5 gravity seals on him that he could release if needed. Naruto found that his father did know about the impending coup and was having Itachi, his inside spy, along with some Anbu, investigating the Uchiha to find out who was in on the coup and those that weren't. The plan was to raid the compound, once they got the inside information, and arrest the ones in on the coup. If all went according to plan Naruto wouldn't have to do much, but then since when was he then lucky? He may have been said to have had the devil's luck in the future, but that was with gambling or things of chance. It's not like that luck ever stopped people from trying to kill or capture him, but he supposed that was why it was called the devil's luck. Done, Naruto thought. As that night Naruto finished all the preparations he could think of. Now all he had to do for the next 2 weeks was keep storing as much chakra as he can while not putting himself in danger, and keep training his body. 2 weeks wasn't enough time to do much else, but he was putting the finishing touches on the seal he made for Gaara. It was modeled after his own but with a few tweaks to be able to be put on top of the seal Gaara already has. Plus the seal will filter the Fugaku's chakra into Gaara's better, and keep Fugaku out of Gaara's head, unless Gaara wanted to speak with him. While the seal still let Gaara access the Baiju's power, that was tricky. Naruto was very happy with the seal he made, and checked it over at least 3 times after he was done because it was going on his friend. Sealing was like an art to Naruto, and he was a natural at it with his creativity. 1 week later Gomen sighed. Dad, I didn't want you to worry. Naruto whispered looking down. Minato sighed. What were you doing out there, that you thought you needed to ditch your guards? You know they're there to protect you? Minato asked, still too relieved that he was okay to be mad. Naruto sighed, I know, but I was trying to make Rasengan better. And I didn't want them watching me. Naruto still couldn't lie to him. Trick, yes, outright lie, no. Minato blinked then blinked again. That wasn't really what he was expecting. He saw the chakra burns, so he thought Naruto could have been practicing it, but then he saw the craters. Even then though, he still didn't think his 6-year-old son was trying to improve his jutsu. Naruto, I saw the area where you were training. What did you do to it? Minato asked, almost in awe. Naruto smiled up at him and replied childishly, I made it bigger. Then, completely obliterating the serious atmosphere, you gave Minato the cheesiest grin. It's called Udama Rasengan. Naruto finished, putting 2 bandaged fingers up in a V sign. Minato let out a breath that sounded more like a laugh, and smiled at his son. That great, Naruto, I'd like to see it, when we get you out of here. Minato said, sounding proud. Then Minato's voice changed to upset, but if you don't stop ditching your Anbu guards, you will never leave my side again. Minato's voice changed back to calm and he smiled. Got it. Naruto nodded, a little scared. Then Minato got up good, in a sing-song voice. Now if I can trust you to stay put a minute, I'm going to see how soon we can get out of here. Minato said as he went out to find a nurse. Naruto almost laughed at how his dad just changed from calm to mad to happy. Damn, I guess I really worried him this time. I gotta be more careful. Well, at least I know Gaara's alright, and we're already friends. I got to remember to send him another Kitsune clone in a few days though. But now it will be a few days to a week before I can sneak away again and start on the Rasenshuriken. I don't know why I bother though. I can't use it without breaking every bone, Mussy, and selling half my arm without stage mode. I might have an idea about that, kid. You just need the toad to knock the natural energy out of you when you get too much, right? That's right, if I can't knock it out in time I'll turn into a toad statue. Alright, well, have you tried summoning the toads yet? No. But I haven't technically signed the contract yet. I didn't think it would work. Well, it's worth a try before you go blowing up your arm. Besides, the contract summons from another dimension, so it must be some kind of space-time jutsu. So it is possible that your contract with them is still valid, even your name doesn't appear on the scroll. But will they remember me? Would I be summoning them from this timeline? Or mine? I don't know, kid. I am not a summon. You will just have to try and see. Naruto was pulled from his thought when his father came back into the room. Alright Naruto, they said that I can take you home, as long as you rest. Minato told Naruto, giving him a look that meant he was going to rest whether he liked it or not. Minato carried him all the way home and up the stairs to his room, laying him in his bed. Because it was late enough, he should be sleeping anyway. Naruto was sitting on his bed and his stomach grumbled. He put his hand behind his head and smirked when Minato looked at him. Alright, I'll get you some food, but you stay in bed. Minato said, rolling his eyes at his son. Naruto watched him leave and smiled. Arigato, father. Later that night, Naruto had meet Gaara next to 6 years old, on the timeline scroll undercurrent. Then sealed it back up and hid it back under the floorboards beneath his bed. Content in the changes he had made so far. But the Uchiha massacre is only 1 year away now. After Naruto got out of class, he said goodbye to Sasuke at the gate and headed straight for the training field. Naruto sighed when he sensed Anbu guards following him. He would have to ditch them with a clone, again. When Naruto got to the training grounds, he made a bunch of clones to train lightly, so while the guards watched his clones, he slipped away. A few minutes later, Naruto arrived at one of the training grounds out of the way, so it wouldn't matter if he destroyed it in his training. Which he would. He was getting really good at ditching those Anbu. That might have been his quickest time yet. His dad still didn't know how often he ditches his guards. Gotta love those clones. Naruto started by making the normal Rasengan, then he tried pushing more chakra to make it bigger. The Rasengan was getting bigger, then boom. It blew up right in his face. Damn it. Naruto complained, shape manipulation when I made it bigger, that's why I needed a clone to help me the first time I made it. I'll just master it with a clone again first, then I'll try one-handed. Himself. I lost though with that plan. Naruto made 400 clones and got to work. There were explosions going off every few seconds for the next 3 hours before finally a pair of the clone made a perfect Udama Rasengan. Naruto saw it and smiled at the crater it made as those 2 clones used it. He dispelled all the clones, gaining their experience. After a moment of letting the information settle in his head, Naruto recreated the 400 clones and set them back to work using only their own hands so he would not need a clone to help make it. By the time he got it right, it was getting dark. His father would be looking for him soon. Naruto dispelled his clones, leaving only the ones with the Anbu. He felt the drain on him even with the chakra reserves he has. His body is still only 6. Naruto flopped down in the crater he just made, to catch his breath. Just 10 minutes. Then I have to get back before Dad realizes I'm not with the Anbu. Naruto thought. Unfortunately for Naruto, all that training took his mind off that fact that he had already set off a much more durable clone, which decided to poof right then. The fox clone's memories entered Naruto's mind and he smiled. Gaara was alright and now they are friends again. Then Naruto felt it, and had just enough time to think, oh shit, before he blacked out. Minato had been watching Naruto's clones train for a while now, thinking the real one was in there somewhere. It was now getting dark though. Minato called out to get his son's attention. He rolled his eyes when they all turned to him. How about you call it today and we go get some dinner? It wasn't really a question. The clones looked nervous for a moment. They passed so quick the Anbu probably didn't even notice. Okay Dad? Naruto chirped. One Naruto ran up to him smiling, while all the others poofed. Minato made a skeptical face at him and cupped Naruto's face with one hand. You're not hot. Only clones don't get hot. Minato stated, narrowing his eyes slightly at the clone that looked down and shuffled his feet, knowing they'd been caught. Minato had taken to checking your son for being a clone since Naruto tricked him when he was 2 with a clone who went to the office with him. Kneeling down to the clone, Minato put his hands on the clone's shoulders and asked quietly, where is the real Naruto? Trying to be calm as he started to worry. The clone looked up wondering what to do. If the original was in trouble he needed to tell his father, but if he wasn't he'd be in trouble. Scratch that, he was already in trouble the moment he was caught. The clone sighed. Follow me, he said, and jumped into the trees heading to where he knew the original had gone. They arrived there in minutes. He should be somewhere around here, the clone informed Minato just before he poofed. Minato didn't have to look long before he found a clearing littered with craters. He was really starting to worry now. He scanned the craters and soon spotted a mop of blonde hair, in the biggest one. He flashed over to his son across the clearing in less than a second. Minato kneeled down checking Naruto over. There was no blood or bruises, but he sensed Naruto was very low on chakra. Not enough to endanger his life, but definitely enough to knock him out for a few days. Minato went to pick Naruto up and noticed the chakra burns on his son's hands. They were worse than when he learned Rasengan. Minato shut his eyes tight, realizing it was at least partly his fault, and let his breath out in a small huff. After picking Naruto up carefully, Minato looked back as he was leaving the training grounds with the small son sleeping on his shoulder. Just what was he doing here? How did they do it? And why did he have to ditch his guards? Again? Minato thought as he looked at the craters again. Naruto woke up to his whole body feeling sore and didn't move. He hadn't worked that hard since he came back in time. He was getting lazy in such a peaceful place, but he knew that peace wouldn't last for long, if he did nothing. Naruto sighed softly, and then still noticing someone was with him. He relaxed though when he recognized this and opened his eyes to see his father. His dad had his head resting on his folded arms and was leaning on the side of the bed he was in. Naruto felt a pang of guilt seeing how worried they made his father. Dismissing the fact that he was in a hospital for the moment, Naruto reached over and put his hand softly in his father's hair, trying not to wake him. "I'm sorry, Dad," Naruto whispered quietly as he ran his hand through his dad's hair, which was identical to his own. Minato shifted his Naruto rested his newly bandaged hand on top of his father's own hand. Minato looked up sleepily at his son and realized he was finally awake. "Naruto, you're awake," Minato said quietly as he sat onto Naruto's bed and leaned over him. Minato hugged Naruto softly, being extra careful of him, and then kissed his forehead. "You had me worried, Naruto," Minato said as he ran his hand through Naruto's hair. Naruto leaned into the touch. In his last life he didn't have a parent to show him affection like this, and he loved how it felt. It made him feel protected. When Fox Naruto saw that, he came around beside Gaara and nuzzled his head into Gaara's chest. He may have been a Naruto clone, but he was still a fox and a little weird after he did it, but Gaara latched onto him and started crying into his fur. So he didn't really care. He stayed with Gaara and let him cry into his fur till it was getting dark. Was an instinctual reaction to comfort his friend. He thought it was a Gaara had calmed down but was still holding on to Fox Naruto's fur. "Gaara, it's getting late, we should get you home," Fox Naruto said. "You will come too?" Gaara sniffed. The fox's eyes softened. "Yes Gaara, I'll stay with you. But Gaara, I can only be here for about 1-2 days, it was supposed to be 1 but I got here quick," the fox said softly. Gaara looked scared. "You're gonna leave me?" He looked like he would cry again. "No Gaara, I will never really leave you. I will always be your friend. But I am a clone, I will not last forever. When I dispel my memories will go to the original. I am him just as much as he is me." Gaara still looked ready to cry. The fox Naruto couldn't stand seeing his friend sad because of him. "How about this Gaara, and 1 week after I dispel, I will come back to see you." Gaara was still not happy that he would leave but gave him a small smile and nodded. After Gaara went up through his house to his room, and Fox Naruto snuck in through the window. Gaara remembered something. "Hey, since your real name is a secret, what do I call you?" Gaara asked. Fox Naruto blinked. "That's a good question, how about you call me Kid?" "Yeah, Kid, like a young fox?" the newly named Kid said. Gaara's lips were twitching. "You mean like a fox baby?" Gaara finally gave in and smirked at him. Kid laughed. "Yep, here's what Kyuubi calls me and it is kind of fitting. Except the baby part, but he is pretty old." Gaara stopped smirking at him. "You mean the Kyuubi is nice?" Kid rolled his eyes at him then sighed. "Well, Kyuubi didn't used to be, and I still wouldn't call him nice. Heck, the first time I met him I think he said something about eating me. But I kind of grew on him, so now he helps me out when I need it. I heard about the trouble Fugaku is giving you though. You know, I might be able to help with that." Kid finished. "Think about how to fix Gaara's seal." Scene changed. Naruto had felt a pain in his stomach a day ago that he knew came from his fox clone, and knew it was about Gaara. Because that pain was the pain of loneliness he had felt so long ago. Despite a few of the villagers still looking at him with caution and sometime even glaring, it was far better than his first life. His father helped too. With him alive, Naruto knew he wouldn't have to be alone. But he would never forget that pain either. Right now though Naruto was in class, he had finished most of his wind chakra training on the weekend, and decided that when he got out of class he would start trying to recreate the Udama Rasengan, to build up the power he would need for the Rasenshuriken. Naruto was started out of his thoughts though when Iruka called on him. "Naruto, can you explain what a genjutsu does?" Iruka asked. A genjutsu is a type of jutsu used to confuse an enemy, making them see things that aren't there. Naruto answered, trying not to sound too smart but still answer correctly. "That's right Naruto, genjutsu." Iruka started going more in depth but Naruto zoned back out. He was in the top 5 of his class, trying to not stick out but not look bad either. He had a plan to get on the same team as before. He would just make himself the dead last in the last year of the academy so he'd be on the right team. That was later though. Right now he just wanted to know what the clone found about Gaara. It should dispel soon. Maybe it's time to tell him the truth, Kid. "What? But I know you don't want to, but you will have to someday." "I know. But not right now." Naruto, focusing back on the real world, quickly came up with one of his half-truths. "Those? I made those tags, Dad." Naruto answered, hoping to take his father's mind off the other question. Minato blinked. "You made them? But who taught you to make seals?" Minato pushed further. "Oh crap! I could tell him Jiraiya did. He did teach me the basics so it would be true, but if he asked him Jiraiya would say he didn't. This is it. The time has finally come that I can either lie my ass off, or tell him the truth. But if I tell him the truth he won't ever look at me the same." Naruto thought as he resigned himself to his fate. "Father, I will tell you, but not here, no one else can know." Naruto stated in a small voice that held sadness. Minato sat there watching your son for a moment, as he felt a wave of nervousness come over him. His son sounded scared. "Naruto, his son never was scared." "Naruto," he started but was interrupted as Sasuke woke up. Sasuke looked over at them sleepily and smiled when he saw Naruto. "You're okay." Naruto laughed, and just like that the serious atmosphere was obliterated. "Well, of course I am. Why does everyone always ask me that?" Naruto asked rhetorically. But Sasuke had to answer anyway. "I mean, Naruto did just give him a perfect opening. Because you're always getting yourself into trouble, duh." Sasuke answered with a smirk. Oi! I'm not! Naruto yelled. As the bickering continued, Minato could only think of what would worry his son so much, and resolved to ask him as soon as they were home. That night, after Itachi and his mom had come and gone and Naruto's dad finally left after explaining what had happened to the rest of the Uchihas, Sasuke asked him what he had been dying to know all day. Naruto, you said you would tell me the whole story about why the Uchihas formed a rebellion. I want to know. Sasuke told his friend, but made no room for argument. Naruto sighed. Alright Sasuke, I can't tell you exactly how I know this because it's related to an S-class secret. Naruto started, the S-class secret part being true concerning the Kyuubi, but he couldn't tell him about the future anyway. Alright, a long time ago there was a man named Uchiha. Back in the time of the first Hokage, this man was the head of the Uchiha clan. He made the pact with the head of the Senju clan, Senju Hashirama, the first Hokage, to make the Leaf Village. However, he thought he should be the first Hokage, so he fought Senju Hashirama for the title. In the fight, it was said that he summoned the Kyuubi no Kitsune and was able to control him using his Sharingan, but he lost to the Senju anyways due to their bloodline to stop Baiju like the Kyuubi. Naruto stopped for a moment to let it sink in. Then, as you know, 7 years ago the Kyuubi attacked the village, killing many people before being stopped by the Yonami. Because of that, some villagers thought it was an Uchiha who used Kyuubi to attack the village. They became less trusting to the Uchiha, and the Uchiha had to be careful because if something went wrong near them, they would be the ones looked at first. Soon the villagers' fear gave birth to the very thing they feared. It had gotten better over the years, but the Uchiha had already grown tired of being prosecuted at every turn and planned a coup to overthrow the village, gaining the power and respect they desired. By doing so, though, the Uchihas could have started a clan war and killed many people. You know the rest. Naruto finished. Naruto? Sasuke asked after a minute. Yeah? Naruto turned to him. Sasuke looked down. Were they wrong? Naruto's eyes sharpened. Yes. He answered in a short voice that made Sasuke look at him, seeing his resolve. Sasuke, what happened to them may have been wrong, but to betray your comrades, your friends, your village, and intend to kill so many people, is much worse. Naruto looked at him with no uncertainty on his face or in his words. They could have found another way, tried to prove themselves, even if it wasn't fair that they had to. Just through the course of time it was already getting better. But now, they didn't just betray all the village but everyone with the Uchiha name. Naruto let his eyes wander down. Sasuke knew he was right and looked down too. They were quiet for a while. Then Naruto spoke. Sasuke, there's one more thing you should know. Sasuke looked at Naruto when he hesitated. You can't tell anyone about this. Sasuke nodded and Naruto continued. The man in the orange spiral mask uses an alias, Tabi, but really is Uchiha. Naruto explained carefully. Sasuke's eyes widened. But didn't you say he lived in the time of the first Hokage? He'd be dead now. Sasuke asked, confused. He's not dead. I don't know how he kept himself alive, but I know it's him. And when he stabbed me, Sasuke winced, remembering. I saw his eye and it had a different Sharingan in it. About a half hour passed and neither boy was asleep, both thinking. One thinking about what had happened so far, and the other thinking about what he should do. Finally Sasuke spoke. Madara or not, I will find the man in that mask one day and kill him before he can destroy my clan anymore. He tried to kill your father. If you hadn't have stopped him, the Uchihas would have been blamed for the death of the fourth Hokage. Sasuke stated to his friend. Well, that could have gone worse, I guess. But just to make sure he doesn't ever go off the deep end, I'll let him know I'm with him. Naruto thought. Same goes for me, Sasuke. He tried to kill my father and almost killed me. Plus he will come for me one day. Naruto told him. Why would he be coming for you? Sasuke asked, confused and a little worried. Sorry Sasuke, that's the S-class secret. But one day I will tell you, I promise. Naruto promised before they both fell asleep. Tsuku's lui usubiere narulut di ulutu eternulori wailed si fitivine uzini tor kuber. I asked her Lily if you ever seen his eyes in you move. Ni ue alikode eelis nusndil yeah, I was under the roof, even seen him I have. Though now he just stared in horror. A man with a spiral orange mask had appeared out of the ground just as Naruto had pushed his father out of the way. Sasuke had seen all of it with his active Sharingan. He would remember his friend saving his father, the Hokage, and being stabbed by this man in perfect clarity forever. Moments later he blacked out from blood loss and stress. His brother caught him before he hit the ground. Minato didn't know why his son had pushed him and stumbled a few feet before he got his balance back. By the time he did though, a masked figure had come out of the ground, right in front of where he had just been, and quickly stabbed his son with a kunai. His son had just saved him, possibility at the cost of his own life. There was nothing but horror on the young Hokage's face when he saw his son being held in midair by a kunai meant for him. That horror though was quickly turning to rage. Minato moved quickly toward the attacker, forming a powerful Rasengan in one hand and preparing to catch Naruto in his other hand. Before he could, though, Naruto looked up at the orange spiral masked nin, his eyes crimson, and smirked tauntingly at him. Madara was so surprised at this child that had not only seen his attack but had the ability to save his target. He had stopped for just a few seconds. Naruto used this time to grab the wrist attached to the hand holding the kunai in his stomach and place a seal on it. Just before his father rammed a powerful Rasengan into Madara's chest, sending him flying back straight into Fugaku. The Yondaime caught Naruto quickly but gently, putting him down, and ran after the masked nin that had dared to hurt his son, determined to destroy him, but Madara was already sinking into the ground. Before he could, though, the seal Naruto placed on his wrist exploding, blowing his hand off in the process. Madara screamed, quickly grabbing his detached hand, and sunk into the ground just before Minato could reach him. That brat caught me off guard. Now that I'm this injured and surprise is no longer on my side, it would be suicide to keep fighting. I have to retreat. Madara cursed colorfully with his 100-year-old vocabulary, as he retreated through the ground. After Minato couldn't sense the masked nin's chakra anymore, he turned back and rushed to his son, who was kneeling with one knee on the ground. Naruto was holding his stomach, panting. He had seen Madara get away, but he also saw what had happened to Fugaku when Madara had been blown into him. Fugaku had landed in a wall where a broken pipe was sticking out. He was impaled through, and definitely dead. Naruto thought it was probably for the best, but was worried about how Sasuke would react to his father's death. Despite the fact Sasuke had attacked his father to help him, it was still his father. He would worry about that later though, if the time comes. Right now he was a bit more concerned with the hole in his stomach. Naruto looked up, relieved to see the fights around them were over and the Anbu taking unconscious Ukaz to where they would be treated and questioned. A shadow fell over Naruto and he looked back to see his father standing over him. His father picked him up carefully without a word, and motioned for Itachi to follow him with Sasuke. They were rushing. Naruto knew they were going to the hospital and mentally groaned, but didn't say anything as his father looked down at him, his eyes practically overflowing with concern. Naruto was tired, but for that look he summoned what strength he had left and grinned at his father. "Don't worry, Dad, everything is gonna be fine." Naruto tried comforting his father. Minato smiled at him. "Aren't I the one who should be telling you that?" Minato asked rhetorically. Naruto smiled as he closed his eyes and finally let himself rest, comfortable in his father's arms. Minato started to panic when Naruto blacked out. He rushed ahead of Itachi to the hospital. "I need a medic!" Minato yelled as soon as he was inside the hospital doors. A young medic rushed to him. Seeing the injury, he yelled for someone to get a bed and prep for surgery. By that time Itachi had run in with Sasuke asking for a doctor. Sasuke wasn't as badly hurt as Naruto. The kunai had just hit his shoulder, but there was an artery there, so he lost a lot of blood and he was in the intensive care unit for the night. He would have been there longer, but the doctors noticed he was healing much faster than expected. Stitched up. The kunai that hit Naruto though had punctured his kidney, not deeply, but Minato arranged it so that when Naruto was realized from the intensive care unit he would be transferred to Sasuke's room. He knew they would like that when they woke up. 2 days later, Konoha Hospital. It was morning when Naruto next awoke. He opened his eyes and immediately knew he was in the hospital. He didn't feel too badly though. He looked down at the bandages around his stomach and tried to move. Naruto winced out. "Ow, okay, it hurts but I can move," he thought. Sitting up, Naruto looked around and saw that Sasuke was in the bed next to him sleeping, and his father was in a chair sitting next to his bed also asleep. He could see his father had small circles under his eyes and looked exhausted. Naruto sighed and wondered how long he was out for. Maybe a couple days, because he had obviously worried his father for at least that long. After a few minutes Minato started to wake up, and saw Naruto sitting up awake. He quickly got up and went to her son. "Naruto!" Minato called for his son's attention. Naruto turned his head to look up at him and smiled. "How are you feeling, son?" Minato asked, concerned. Naruto rolled his eyes as if he had gotten the paper cut. "I'm fine, Dad," he replied. Minato smirked at him. "You know you're going to give me gray hair, you keep this up." If you could grin and smirk at the same time Naruto was doing it. He reached up to his dad's hair as though he were analyzing it. While Minato quirked an eyebrow. "How do you know I already haven't?" Naruto asked with his hand still on Minato's hair. "Aha! I have. You have gray hair!" Naruto exclaimed just before being grabbed and tickled around his neck, as Minato was being careful of his stomach. "I do not, take it back," Minato said, smirking and tickling him. Okay fine." Naruto managed out through giggles. "Good. Now you mind telling me why you were at the Uchiha compound today? And where you got those tags?" Minato asked, pointing at the tags Naruto had made. "Dad probably went through my pockets since he saw me put the tag on Madara." "Well damn, what do I say to that? FCII you were out one eye, Hokage just." Sasuke closed his eyes and tears slid down his face, but he did not whimper or whine. He reopened his eyes and spoke. "That wasn't a request," Sasuke stated coldly. If anyone were looking they would have noticed when Sasuke's eyes opened they were blood red with a single tomoe, in each eye. Sasuke charged his father's back using his ninja training. He jumped a few feet up and kicked the side of his father's head as hard as he could. Fugaku felt the blow to his head and realized it was his own son. It wasn't strong enough to make him drop his hostage, but Naruto felt the grip loosen. Naruto kicked off behind himself as hard as he could, freeing himself from Fugaku, and running to Sasuke's side as soon as his feet hit the ground. Minato was shocked but didn't hesitate. He ran past the boys and hit Fugaku with a chakra-enhanced punch, sending the Uchiha ahead a good 50 feet and through a few walls. Once he was sure Fugaku would be taking a while to get up, Minato turned to the boys. "Naruto, are you alright?" He wanted to pick his son up and just hold him for a while, but he knew he couldn't. They were still in danger. "I'm fine, Dad," Naruto replied instantly. It was habit by now. Minato knew he would probably say that no matter what, but he didn't see any injuries, so he moved on. "I thank you, Sasuke. I won't forget what you just did to help Naruto." Sasuke looked up at him, and just nodded. He wasn't ready to talk about any of this. Naruto looked to his friend who seemed tired, and his eyes widened. Sasuke." Sasuke turned to him with very little emotion on his face. "Your eyes, their Sharingan is active," Naruto said, blunt as always. Sasuke blinked at him, actually showing a bit of surprise despite the situation. Minato's voice low pulled their thought elsewhere. "Boys, I need you to go hide." Fugaku was getting back up. He threw about 10 kunai, then made a hand sign and called out "Kunai Kage Bunshin," making them into over 200, not caring that both boys were in the line of fire. Minato put himself in front of Naruto and Sasuke, yelling for them to stay back, but Sasuke was too far to the side when a kunai got past Minato. It hit him. Sasuke! Naruto yelled when he saw Sasuke get hit. He didn't waste time. Naruto grabbed Sasuke's arm and pulled him over and down to a crouch behind Minato and himself. Minato knew Sasuke had been hit but couldn't look back to see how bad it was. As soon as the kunai stopped though, he felt Itachi drop down beside him. "Itachi, get Sasuke to the hospital and take Naruto with you. Stay with them till I come," Minato commanded. "Hi Hokage-sama!" Itachi responded instantly. He picked up both boys, being careful of Sasuke's wound, which he had yet to pass out from, but if the bleeding didn't stop he would soon. Naruto for his part didn't complain, though he knew Madara was close by, so he was trying to sense where he was before Itachi went too far. Then he spotted him up on one of the roofs with his orange spiral mask on, watching, just far enough back that no one would notice him unless they were looking. Just then Fugaku attacked his father again, going through a string of hand signs. He called out the attack, "Gaara no Jutsu, Great Dragon Fire Technique." Itachi had gotten Sasuke and Naruto out of the way and took cover behind a wall as large dragon heads made of fire headed straight for Minato. Naruto was watching the fight from Itachi's side, as Itachi was trying to think of a way to get them out of the area safely. Naruto saw his father jump to the side of the flaming dragon heads doing hand seals for a water jutsu. Then Naruto noticed Madara tends to move looking right at his father. Madara pulled out a kunai and sunk into the roof. He's gonna kill him, Naruto thought as he pushed a large amount of chakra into his legs. He was out of Itachi's reach before the young Uchiha even knew he was moving. The 7-year-old blonde time traveler couldn't see Madara, but he knew the jutsu he was using was quick. He had to move faster, or he wasn't going to make it. Naruto instinctively pulled on Kyuubi by his chakra, turning his eyes red, and pushed the demonic chakra into his small legs. His father would not die this time, Naruto thought. No promises. He made it just in time, pushing his surprised father out of the way, just as Madara came out of the ground. He realized though he wasn't going to be able to get himself out of the way right before he felt Madara's kunai enter his stomach. Damn it! Naruto cursed silently as he watched the fight between his father the Hokage, and his best friend's father, the head of the Uchiha clan and the rebellion. Fugaku Uchiha, it all had been going so well. Flashback: 1 hour ago, Manbu showed up at the Uchiha compound asking a few to come with them for some debriefing. The Uchihas were going peacefully, they were going to be questioned at the IT department. Naruto had been watching out of sight the whole day, sending a cage bush in to replace himself at the academy. Everything was going perfect, then some of the Uchihas started fighting back, refusing to go with the Anbu. Soon Fugaku came out and was ordering the Uchiha into formations. It was all downhill from there. Flashback: and Naruto was watching all the battles around him while focusing on the fight his father was in. His father looked to be doing fine, so he was about to transform into an anonymous Anbu and help the others fighting when he heard Sasuke. "Father?" Sasuke shouted across the noise of the fighting. Sasuke was very confused why his father was fighting the Hokage, and why all the Uchiha were fighting Anbu and other Konoha ninjas. But he knew it had to stop. He could see this wasn't some sparring to attack the Hokage outside of one was considered treason. Sasuke ran towards his father, ignoring all the battles around him, as Naruto watched him closely, ready to help him if something happened. Fugaku saw Sasuke coming and separated from Minato. The enemy stopped too, seeing the child in the way. Fugaku never took his eyes off Minato but spoke to Sasuke. "Sasuke, get out of here now," he commanded. Sasuke would normally not question his father, but this was his home. He had to know what's going on. "Father?" Sasuke almost pleaded to know. Fugaku was silent. "Yes, Fugaku, why don't you tell your son what you've done?" Minato cut in. Sasuke looked at the Hokage, then back to his father, waiting for an answer. Fugaku's face showed no emotions, but his eyes were glaring daggers at the Yondaime. Instead of answering, Fugaku pushed Sasuke out of the way and attacked the Yondaime with a great fireball jutsu. Minato jumped to the side out of the way as Fugaku ran right behind the fireball, throwing kunai at the Hokage, not letting up for a moment. Sasuke just sat where he had been pushed on the ground, stunned, as his eyes took in the destruction around him. He hardly felt the hand on his shoulder and slowly turned to see a familiar face. "Naruto." Sasuke looked at him, confused why he was there. Naruto just looked down at him sadly. For a moment he looked very old. "Come on, Sasuke, let's get back." Naruto pulled Sasuke up by his arm, and walked him back to where he had been hiding. "Naruto, what's going on?" Sasuke asked in a quiet and scared voice. Naruto sighed and looked down. "I don't know how to tell you, Sasuke. But some of the Uchihas were forming a rebellion against the Hokage. Itachi was helping to find information, but your father is the leader of the coup." Sasuke looked up at Naruto, horrified. His mind denied it and he tried to voice it was wrong, but he couldn't. The look on his best friend's face wouldn't let him, and he remembered the last few weeks things had been strange at home. He still didn't understand though why. Naruto looked sadly at him. "There is a story for that I will tell you later, but the simple version: they wanted more power. They wanted to rule Konoha instead of just protecting it. And they could have started a war because of it. Maybe still could." A single tear ran down Sasuke's young face as he and his best friend watched their fathers try and kill each other. Minato quickly dodged in a shuriken that was being thrown at him and flashed through hand seals for a water jutsu, Mizurappa, violent water wave. Minato called out the attack. The powerful stream of water hit Fugaku fully, throwing him back into one of the walls and soaking him through. As Fugaku was being thrown back by the jet stream, he saw something. something that would give them an advantage. The Yondaime watched as his opponent seemed to be running away from him. It wasn't the first time it had happened, but Fugaku was not the type to run away. Something was wrong. Then he saw where Fugaku was going and his mind froze even as he started running. He knew he wouldn't make it. Fugaku was too far ahead. He yelled Naruto. Sasuke was staring at the ground trying to understand, and Naruto had turned from the fight to watch Sasuke for just a few seconds when he heard his father scream. Naruto had never heard his father sound so desperate. He and Sasuke both whipped their heads to the scream. Fugaku was almost on top of them, with a kunai out and looking right at Naruto. Naruto didn't have time to think. They grabbed the back of Sasuke's shirt and threw him back. Turning quickly back to Fugaku, Naruto dodged Fugaku's grab at him and kicked him in the stomach. Hearing a satisfying from Fugaku, he tried to jump back down. He couldn't. Fugaku had grabbed his foot when he kicked him and was pinning Naruto's arms with his one arm around him, now with a kunai at his neck. Minato stops dead, bring the word Ziflixka kill to a different level. Let my son go now. He ground out. Fugaku shivered at the killing intent rolling off Minato but pressed on. Call off the Anbu. Fugaku replied as a command. Minato cursed. He couldn't tell the Anbu to stop. It would be like surrendering, but that bastard had his son. Sasuke was just a few feet behind his father, who apparently deemed him not a threat. Sasuke's emotions started moving from shock to anger. His father, who he had tried so hard to impress, was holding his best friend hostage. But he had to try one more time. Father, let Naruto go. Fugaku didn't even look at him. Leave Sasuke. Naruto and Sasuke were sparring together in the Uchiha training grounds, using only taijutsu. They were pretty even, but Sasuke had more speed and Naruto had more power. Just like always. While Naruto actually had to try because even though he knew more their bodies were at the same level, this was the first time in months his mind could relax. Just letting his body flow through the motions, block, duck, sweep, dodge, counter and always keep moving. It was easy just letting everywhere he go until there was only a fight, and not even having to fight for survival. Just to fight for fun and to become strong with his friend. They sparred for hours, finally taking a break when Itachi found them. Sasuke, dinner is ready. Naruto, you as always are welcome to join. Itachi told him. They stopped their training and he yelled coming. Then followed Itachi to the house for dinner. It had been a few months since the Uchiha incident and since Minato had found out about the future. So Naruto figured it had been enough, and now it was time to liven up the town. While his father had still been treating him like a kid, like he wanted. Naruto noticed that his father was quiet, like sometimes he just didn't know what to say. So it was time to remind his father how truly childish he could be. Naruto and his class were just let out of the academy. Sasuke was waiting for his brother to pick him up as usual. There was no way he would leave by himself with those drooling fangirls watching. Sakura and Ino were two of those drooling fangirls. Shikamaru and Chauji were headed in the direction of Shikamaru's favorite cloud watching spot. Shino had disappeared. Kiba walked through the gate and was heading home. Hinata, well, she was hiding behind a tree watching Naruto. Naruto was talking to Sasuke. Normally he would just walk out dodging his own group of fangirls. He was the Hokage's son after all, so without their parents telling them he was a monster, his status, his baby Baiyu eyes, and sunny blonde hair, his fan club was almost as big as Sasuke's. Today though Naruto wasn't leaving right away, though Sasuke didn't mind the company. He was curious. Hey Naruto, don't you usually go to the tower after school? Sasuke asked. Yeah, but I wanted to get the full effect. Naruto told him with one of those looks that said this wouldn't end well. Sasuke hid a smirk and tried not to show it, but he loved to see the pranks his friend pulled off. Get the full effect of what? Sasuke asked, one eyebrow raised. Naruto grinned big, showing his teeth. Oh yes, this was going to be good. Naruto raised one hand in a seal, which Sasuke knew to be half of the ram seal usually used to focus and release Genjutsu. Naruto focused the chakra and activated the seals he had placed in the classroom. Sasuke didn't know what happened though, so after a few seconds of Naruto's grin not fading, he was about to ask but never got the chance because right then there was a scream heard from inside. Naruto! Iruka-sensei yelled loud enough the whole village most likely heard. Naruto loved it. It was like the signal to start the chase, and he was off like a shot. Sasuke turned around to ask what the hell he did, but when he did, all he saw was an orange blur in the distance. The Naruto-sensei blurred past him. Looking orange too? Naruto looked back and laughed. It went better than planned. Iruka-sensei must have still been in the room when I activated the seals. Naruto thought as he was still laughing, it was just supposed to be the classroom. And everything in it that was neon orange, but now Iruka-sensei was too, and it doesn't even seem like he knows that he's changing color. Naruto looked back to see an angry Iruka-sensei changing from neon orange to sparkly pink to neon blue, and back to neon orange. No one would know it except for him, but it was kind of a tribute to his past and soon-to-be future team. The orange of course represented him, the pink was for Sakura, and the blue was for Sasuke. Naruto laughed as he thought about it. It was like a sunset at the beach. He was like the shining sun, bright and powerful. Sasuke was the sea below, deep and strong. Then there was Sakura, the pink glow in between them, acting as a buffer. Well, that was how it was before. This time he was closer to Sasuke, so they wouldn't really need a buffer, but Sakura will still balance the team out nicely, once she is pulled out of fangirl mode. Now there were about a team worth of ninja chasing him though, and Naruto could even hear a few of them snickering at how Iruka-sensei kept changing color. He had gone through the village at least 4 times now and they were still right behind him. So he started thinking of a way to lose them. I mean, shadow clone diversions worked, but were getting old. Naruto looked behind them to see how many were there. Let's see, 13 so far. It looks like 4 Anbu and 9 shonen. Not bad for a day's work. Now how to ditch them? Naruto thought as he turned back to look around. Before Naruto could turn around though, he felt them coming. All he saw after that was facing the Anbu and shonen that were trying very hard to stop and not run into their Hokage. Minato raised an eyebrow at a shonen that stopped a bit too close to him as the shonen jumped back a bit. Yellow flashed and suddenly he was off the ground. Naruto realized he was now under his father's arm, which was wrapped around his stomach. Alright, would one of you care to explain why you were chasing Naruto? Minato asked, eyeing the color-changing Iruka and hiding a smirk. Ah, Iruka-san, you seem to know more about this. What happened? Minato questioned Iruka as he glanced down at his son, who had his hands under his chin holding his head up despite the fact that there was nothing under him. Well, Hokage-sama, I was in my classroom at the academy after class. I'd let out grading papers when there was a flash of colors. When the flash stopped, I looked around and the whole classroom was orange. Iruka stated, trying not to twitch when he could see how close the young Hokage was to laughing at him. Really? Well, Iruka-san, how do you know Naruto did that? Minato asked, now not hiding your smirk. Iruka stared dumbfounded, his mouth dropped and eyebrows rose. No one but Minato noticed that Naruto had a similar look. He'd ask about it later. Because it was orange, and he ran away laughing. Iruka stated as if that was all the proof needed. Knowing Naruto though, it probably wasn't, Minato knew it. Naruto though deadpanned the best he could while still being held under his father's arm. He was going to be caught because it was orange, as he didn't even stay of orange. I mean, anyone could run away while being chased, laughing manically. Naruto thought, annoyed. Okay, that's a good point. Minato conceded but thought it only fair to ask, Naruto, didn't you do this? Minato asked, looking down at his son who looked back with the biggest blue puppy dog eyes you'd ever seen. Who, me? Naruto questioned innocently. Minato almost caved right then, forcing himself to look away. He tried again. After Naruto had watched the destruction of his jutsu, which had left a crater showing its path far into the forest, he looked back to see his father's reaction. Naruto smiled big. His father's reaction was priceless. Minato was just standing there staring wide-eyed at the trail where the powerful jutsu, Rasenshuriken, had gone. Okay Dad, one of the things one wanted to show you I haven't tried since I came back, so I don't really know if it will work. But here it goes. With that said, Naruto jumped to the center of the clearing, biting his thumb and quickly going through hand signs that made his father's eye widen and jaw drop when he saw the poof of smoke as Naruto called out Kuchos no Jutsu, and slammed his hand on the ground. When the smoke cleared, there was a small toad sitting on the ground. Naruto beamed at the little toad's Gamakichi. He exclaimed, excited. Gamakichi quickly looked up when he heard his name in the familiar but young voice. Bro? Gamakichi questioned. Now it was time for Naruto's jaw to drop. You remember? Naruto almost yelled as Minato was still watching the whole scene from a distance. his eyes still wide. Of course I do. Gamakichi stated, almost annoyed. Why would I? I'm short. He looked back at Naruto and was snickering until, you're short too. Gamakichi yelled. Naruto hated being called short. Oi! I am not. Naruto stated defiantly, but Gamakichi wasn't listening. He was thinking over that last thing he remembered. When Gamakichi didn't say anything, Naruto started to get worried. Hey Kichi, you okay? Naruto asked, kneeling down to the small toad. Gamakichi snaps his head up to Naruto. Yeah. But I remember you died, at least we, the little toad, and Naruto turned to him. Yeah, this is Gamakichi, Kichi, this is my dad. Naruto introduced them as Minato, nodded politely to the toad, and Gamakichi went bug-eyed but nodded to Minato anyway. Kichi turned back to Naruto. Just how far did you go back, Naruto? Asked the little toad. To the beginning. Naruto answered without any hesitation. Well, my beginning, the day I was born. But how did you? Kichi started as Naruto interrupted him. Hold on Kichi, if I'm going to go through the whole story I might as well summon your dad and Ma and Pa too. Since you got your memories when I summon you, they should too. Naruto told him as he was already making seals. Gamakichi just nodded, but Minato didn't know who Gamakichi's dad was. He thought he heard Jiraiya talking about Ma and Pa a few times but didn't ever have sage training, so didn't know them. Naruto, what are you? Was all Minato got out before the whole clearing and then some was filled full of toad, mostly Gamabunda, along with two toads barely bigger than Gamakichi but looked much older. Minato could barely believe his son had just summoned the boss toad and didn't even look very trained. Ma and Pa greeted Naruto, and Gamabunda looked down to see Naruto, who he thought looked smaller than usual, and was about to ask why he had been summoned when his attention was grabbed by another, high Gamabunda. Minato waved at him. The huge toad looked like he'd seen a ghost and almost fainted. After the explanations were told of what time they were in, and how they got there, Gamabunda laughed out loud, shaking the ground. Minato and Naruto didn't know why, but they smirked just seeing it. The big toad quieted to chuckles. Only you, chuckle. Naruto would find a way to do the impossible. Gamabunda shook his head at the boy who truly deserved the title the most unpredictable ninja. Naruto beamed at the huge toad, and the other toads laughed, agreeing with him. Well, he wasn't dubbed the most unpredictable ninja for nothing. Kichi spoke up. Minato just smirked and shook his head, believing every bit. Even at only 7 years old, his son was full of surprises. Alright, it should be dinner time, Kichi, we should be getting back. The large toad told his son. Okay. Bye, Naruto. Kichi yelled, turning to Naruto before both he and Gamabunda poofed. Well, it's about time we got back too. Ma said, looking at Pa. Wait. Naruto said, stopping them. I wanted to show my day that jutsu, but I need sage mode to throw it, so would you. Naruto was interrupted by Pa. Stick around to make sure you don't turn into a giant toad statue. Pa asked. Naruto looked at him and sweat dropped. Yeah. Minato's eyebrows furrowed at it, sounding dangerous. Yeah, Minato didn't have time to say anything though before Pa smiled and told Naruto, sure, go ahead. Naruto stopped and closed his eyes, not moving. Minato was about to go and see if something was wrong when Pa Toad put his staff in front of him. He's alright, it's just taking more time because he's not done it in that body and he doesn't want to mess up. Just give him a minute, whispered the old toad. Minato frowned but nodded. As he looked up to see Naruto opening up his eyes, they were golden with horizontal pupils. The outer edges of his eyes were red, like the toad's. Naruto was smirking at him. Alright, this is Sage Mode, Dad. You might have seen Jiraiya do it before. Naruto said, and Minato nodded. Yeah, but only once. Why are you using it? Minato asked. Hey, well, my jutsu. I haven't learned how to throw without it, and if I use it with my hand it kinda breaks everything in that hand and arm. Naruto said nervously as his father frowned. But don't worry, I can throw it now. He said, trying to break the mood. Preparing the jutsu, Naruto quickly made a clone before his father could start talking him out of it. He really wanted him to see it, and show it off. So before Minato could protest, he saw a familiar ball forming in his son's hand, but then it started changing. When Minato realized what the clone was doing, his eyes became wide and he didn't think he could move. Then he heard it, it's actually buzzing with power. Minato thought as he watched his son, not improve this time but complete his original jutsu. The ball of spinning energy was getting bigger and there now were one blade circling around it like a moving shuriken. Minato watched as the 7-year-old son held this powerful ball of pure chakra above his head as the clone stopped adding the wind element to it and dispelled. Once the jutsu was complete in his hand, Naruto lifted it above his head, keeping his eyes on it. He looked over at his father, who looked like he had moved from his state of shock to pure awe. His father met his gaze, taking his eyes off the jutsu to see his son grinning at him childishly, with a know-it-all look. Naruto felt like the kid he was with his favorite destructive jutsu above his head. He then quickly turned away from his father to the opposite direction of Konoha and threw the giant shuriken of spiraling energy, calling out Rasenshuriken. The next day Naruto awoke in his bed with his head resting on his dad. They had been talking all night about the future, what time Naruto came back to, what happened, and why. Then they moved into other things like Naruto's childhood, and the beginning of his ninja career. Minato didn't know, but Naruto left a lot out from his younger years. Like Naruto told him he lived in his own apartment at the age of 4 but didn't tell him it was because the orphanage kicked him out. He also left out how the villager hated him, he was always alone, and that he hadn't even met Gaara until he was almost 13 years old. Naruto felt a little bad about keeping these things from his father but didn't want him angry at the village, especially not Jiraiya. Even though he left him alone for so long, he came back, and Naruto considered him one of his most precious people. Naruto sat up slowly, trying to not wake his dad and rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He smiled seeing his father sleeping next to him and then looked at the clock. 9 o'clock. I'm gonna be late. Naruto thought and was fully awake, running around his room like a crazy person, literally running up the walls in panic looking for his things for the academy. Minato woke up startled at the sound of a crash. Jumping up to see what happened, he had to bite black laugh at seeing your son under a mountain of stuffed frogs, foxes, and clothes. He was unsuccessful though and started laughing outright when Naruto finally had dug himself to the top. Naruto noticed and glared up at his father, which didn't give off the effect he wanted since there was still a blue frog on his head. So Minato was still snickering at him when he said, "What are you laughing at? You know you're gonna be late too." Naruto pointed out to his father, which caused Minato to stop snickering and started the whole scene over again, only this time it was Minato running around the whole house, walls and all, looking for his stuff for work. Naruto rolled his eyes at this, wondering if he had just looked that silly. Disregarding though because he was late, Naruto snatched up his backpack and shuriken holster and ran out the door, grabbing some kind of breakfast bar on his way out and yelling, "Bye Dad!" and shutting the door behind him. Naruto ran in the classroom just as Iruka-sensei was shutting the door, slipping in between the door and the frame just in time. Running up to the seat next to Sasuke, Naruto sat down, taking a deep breath, and whispered, "Made it." Sasuke looked over to him and rolled his eyes. "Lose track of time setting up one of your pranks?" Sasuke whispered. Naruto turned to him. "Nah, I just got up late." Naruto answered back. Soon Iruka-sensei called for attention and the day went pretty normal, after the explanation of what happened with the Uchiha's, which was heavily edited and got Sasuke lots of sympathy looks, especially from the girls. The story basically went many Uchihas died in an attack on them. Of course Naruto immediately knew the damned council changed the public story so that there would be no will against the few Uchiha left, so that they could more easily start relationships and more babies would be born with the Sharingan. Sasuke though just knew he wasn't supposed to say anything, but frowned at the explanation. Sasuke looked to Naruto in question, but Naruto just shrugged at him so he didn't say anything. It was now almost lunchtime and Naruto was still thinking how he would make the demonstration he was planning for his dad more dramatic. Something was just bugging him though, it was almost like someone was watching him. Duh. Naruto thought and turned slightly, looking out the corner of his eyes to see Hinata watching him with a dreamy look. Naruto rolled his eyes and sighed. She really did like me even this far back. I must have been really stupid not to notice it till she jumped on the battlefield with pain and declared she loved me. Well, I know we can't be together like a couple till we're older, but that doesn't mean I can't let her know I notice her. With that thought, Naruto turned toward Hinata with a big grin and winked at her. Then he turned back, watching for her reaction out of the corner of his eyes. Hinata didn't disappoint. Her jaw dropped, her face turned red. She quickly closed her mouth and turned away, knowing she'd been caught. Naruto was smirking and trying not to laugh, but when he found out why she always blushed like that, he thought it was cute and would try to make her blush. But Hinata in his time had slowly built up a resistance to his tricks. He could still do it, but it was much harder. This little 7-year-old Hinata though was so easy to embarrass. Sasuke looked over to his friend and quirked an eyebrow. "Fangirl?" Sasuke asked Naruto in a whisper so their sensei wouldn't hear. Naruto shook his head. "No, that one is special," he whispered back. Once they were finally let out of class for the day, Naruto and Sasuke waited at the gate. Sasuke was waiting for his brother and Naruto was waiting for his father. It was unusual though, because normally Naruto just walked himself out due to his father work usually kept him in the office till later. So Sasuke was curious. "Why are you waiting, Naruto?" Sasuke asked. "My dad said he'd pick me up today," Naruto answered. No sooner did he said it though the boys saw a yellow flash right in front of them and Minato was there. Minato grinned at his son. "Ready?" he asked Naruto. Naruto just stared at him and said, "You snuck one of your seals on me again, didn't you?" It wasn't really said like a question, and Minato's sweat dropped. Yeah? Now that," Minato said almost like a question at the end. Naruto rolled his eyes and sighed. "Well, at least I know he is still treating me like I'm really 7 years old," Naruto thought. He shook his head and looked up to his dad amused. "Alright, let's go," Naruto yelled in his true 7-year-old form, as Sasuke rolled his eyes and Minato chuckled at him. Naruto led his father to the Forest of Death. It was the only place he knew no one would be likely to catch him throwing around huge amounts of chakra. His father hesitated though when he realized his son was going inside. "Naruto, are you sure you want to go in there?" Minato asked, hopping the 7-year-old time traveler within. Naruto had told him last night that part of his first and only Chunin exam was held in the forest, but from the future or not he didn't really want his son in that forest. Naruto turned around seeing his dad hesitate. "Don't worry, Dad, it's okay. Come on," Naruto called to him, and jumped right over the very high fence in one leap. Minato was right behind, staying close if anything happened. The first clearing they got to seemed to be far enough inside and his dad was sticking to his side like glue, so Naruto decided it was far enough. Naruto's side relaxed in his father's arms. "I wasn't ever really told, but yes, I know what happened," sounding more at ease as his father ran a hand through his hair. "Could you tell me what happened to me?" Minato asked, hopping. It wasn't what he thought it was. Naruto didn't tense, but Minato could see a frown on his son's face when he pulled back to look at him. "He died sealing the Kyuubi into me, but you already knew that," Naruto spoke quietly, resting his head back on Minato before he finished. "Naruto, I'm so sorry." Minato knew it wasn't enough, but what else could he say? "I'm sorry." Naruto stilled at the words. He didn't know what to do with them. He looked up slowly, his face blank but his eyes big, looking up in confusion almost like a kicked puppy. Seeing that look in his son's eyes was worse than facing any enemy. He cupped the side of Naruto's face and looked into his eyes. "I'm sorry I sealed him in you, I'm sorry that in your time I died, and I'm sorry I left you alone." Minato showed pain and sadness. Naruto knew it was completely sincere. That was it. Naruto could feel his mask breaking. The mask he had used for so long that was normally thin, just stretching with his face, but would become hard as steel when he needed it to. He had used that mask to smile when kids in his class laughed at him, and when villagers had glared or sneered at him. He used it to smile, telling the world they couldn't touch him. But those words, "Tim, sorry I left you alone," had touched him. Somewhere in his mind Naruto knew his mask had cracked when a single tear streaked down his face. Minato was completely shocked seeing his son cry for the first time. He held Naruto close as the son clung to him and cried quietly for the first time in his life and many years into the last. After a while Naruto sniffed, wiping away his tears, and looked up at his father. "Father, now that you know, are you gonna treat me different?" Naruto asked, still wiping tears from his face. Minato's eyes softened. "Is that why you were afraid to tell me?" Minato asked, and Naruto nodded without looking at him. Minato put his hand in his son's hair, and Naruto turned to him. "Naruto, whatever life you had before, in this life you are 7 years old, you are my son and I will treat you as such always." Naruto jumped up as best he could, sitting, and hugged him tightly. "Naruto, can't breath," Minato gasped out. Naruto let go and laughed, putting his hand behind his head. Minato just smirked, seeing the happy Naruto back. Alright, let's get some dinner and you can tell me more about this, okay?" Minato asked, getting a smile and a nod from Naruto. As they walked to the kitchen, Naruto spoke up, "Hey Dad, there might be something I could show you that could prove I'm from the future." Naruto told him, "I already believe you, but what did you have in mind?" "Two things, but I'll keep them a surprise." Naruto grinned. "Tomorrow I'll show you, but we'll need a lot of open space," Naruto stated, thinking. Minato was now sure this would end with a bang, but was curious. "Okay, I'll take off work early and pick you up at the academy." Minato smirked and ruffled Naruto's hair. "Why do I feel like I should warn someone to take cover?" Minato thought as they started making food. They spent most of the night talking about the future and what Naruto had been changing in his new life. Everything was too bland. "Nah student." Naruto finished trying to make it seem more noble. "Repile bent as usual. I wanted to liven things up. Plus I'll keep some ninja that chase me on their toes. You think they don't start training their asses or when they're outrun by an academy, Naruto? You use seals, modified ones that you should know." Minato was going to say more, but Naruto jumped in. "Actually they're not modified. I made them myself." Naruto told him, proud of his invention but didn't think it would matter. It's not like a normal ninja could tell the difference between a modified seal and an original unless it was common. Minato blinked. "You made them?" he asked. "Yep." Naruto chirped back. Minato shook his head and smirked. His son really was a steel master. The seals he found on him the night of the Uchiha incident were based off original seals. It's a great talent to be able to modify the seal like he did, but to make an original, that was something else. That was a true gift. The young Hokage looked down at his son and ruffled his hair, smirking at him. "If only your power could be used for good." Minato joked, laughing when the son pouted at him. Then he remembered what he wanted to ask earlier. "Naruto," Minato called for his son's attention, "why do you look so surprised when I asked Shiruka-san how he knew it was you that turned him into the walking eyesore of changing colors?" Naruto sniggered at the title his father gave his latest masterpiece. Then sighed resignedly. He didn't really want to tell his father why, because he didn't want to make him feel bad, but he had to stop hiding things. And he wanted to start being more honest with his father now that he could. "I was surprised because no one had ever come to my defense like that before. Everyone just always assumed I did it, whatever it was." Naruto said the whole thing quietly. Then smirked, "But I guess most of the time I was guilty." He finished. Minato looked closer though and saw that his son's smirk didn't reach his eyes. It was fake. Minato kneeled down in front of his son, who was still sitting on the couch. "Naruto." Minato started, but he really didn't know what to say. Naruto stopped him from going on though. "It's alright Dad. It's not your fault, I only told you because you asked. You don't need to feel bad." Naruto said, trying to smile at him. This time it was real, but it was a sad smile. Minato just looked at him for a minute, and then tried again. "Thank you Naruto, but I don't just feel bad because of blaming myself, I feel bad because I know you do." Minato said, slowly choosing his words with care. His father then put a hand on the top of his head, and put his forehead to his own. "You're my son and I want to help you." Minato pulled back and kissed his son's forehead. Naruto's eyes weren't blinking, they were looking up wide and innocent like the child he appeared to be. Before his father could move away, Naruto jumped forward and hugged him as tight as his small arms could. Minato hugged him back and picked him up off the couch, holding him. After a while, Minato was going to suggest getting some dinner and going out to train with Naruto. He didn't have time to do that too often and it made Naruto happy, but before he could, someone jumped through the window, breaking the silencing seals. He and Naruto, who was still being held, spun around to see who it was. "Rizyu, you set up that trap?" Minato asked, raising to one who can his son's eyes, knowing Niveau Ikrombi. Even some Ordinanbu were under the Aradia puppy out guys no jutsu, and Naruto wasn't even Tenoking at them. Naruto sighed, giving up on catching his father's eyes. "In my defense, I didn't know Iruka-sensei was in the room." Naruto told them with a bored look, but not actually looking at any of them. Most ninja quirked an eyebrow at what he said, but Iruka was the one to ask. "Then how did the trap go off, if it wasn't set for me?" Iruka asked, confused, looking at the small boy, who'd already made a name for himself as a village prankster. Minato had an idea, but he and the rest of the ninja looked at Naruto, waiting. "Because I activated it from outside." Naruto told them as if it was so simple. which to him it was, but for someone who didn't study seals, well, they had no idea how he could have done that. Minato decided it was time to speak up though before anyone asked. "Oh, sorry about that, you see Naruto has been learning about seals," Minato said, putting one hand behind his head while still holding Naruto up with the other. "So I guess he altered one. Alright, everyone back to what you were doing, I'll take care of Naruto," Minato said as all the ninja left, and he flashed Naruto and himself to the Hokage Tower. Meanwhile, and soon it was time for Kid/Naruto's monthly visit, and Gaara was waiting for him at the usual spot in the park where they first met. Gaara had been waiting there since morning. He always looked forward to Naruto's visits. Looking up, he spotted the golden fox he had been looking for and ran to him. "Kid! You're here, I was waiting for you!" Gaara exclaimed, running over. Kid gave him a foxy grin, still in his fox form, and turned around, motioning for Gaara to follow him. They went up to Gaara's room, being careful that Kid wasn't seen. Gaara shut and locked his door as usual behind him to be safe. Kid jumped up on the bed and sat down. "Gaara, remember that seal I told you about?" Kid asked. "Yeah, the one to go on top of mine, right?" Gaara questioned back. "Right, well, I finished it a few months ago, but the problem is I can't put it on you with a clone. Even the clone I'm using now isn't strong enough. It might have the chakra for it, but isn't durable enough to perform the seal. I need to do it in person," Kid explained. Gaara looked up at him, slightly afraid his friend would give up. "So is it really going to come here? Or do I come to you?" Gaara asked hesitantly, hoping Naruto wouldn't say neither and give up on helping him. Naruto caught his nervousness and tried to think of why, and despite how clueless he could be with some things, his friend's feelings wasn't usually one of them. So he thought over the conversation and realized it. Kid then changed into his human form and put a hand on Gaara's shoulder. "Gaara, I am not going to give up, not on you, not ever. You got that?" Naruto was looking at him totally serious but didn't seem to be angry. Gaara looked up to his face, seeing the resolve in his best friend's deep blue eyes. He gave a small smile and nodded. "Good, now I'm going to try and give the real me to you. It would be easier to wait till we're older and become ninja, but I didn't want to leave it that long. Especially since I told you over a year ago I'd get it off." Kid's human form smirked at him. "I'm going to try and get to you before next month, alright?" Kid asked cheerfully, now breaking the serious mood. "Alright." Gaara nodded with a small smile. "Now, want to go play, Kid?" Gaara asked, smirking, because of how last time he won their game. Kid just smirked back, "You're on Sandman." Gaara made a face at the nickname his friend had given him, but Kid had used it a few times, so he was getting used to it. Mainly because trying to get his friend to stop using a nickname was impossible and a waste of time. Gaara pitied the man Naruto would occasionally talk about and wondered what the poor bastard had done to earn the title Rasengan. Hokage Tower. Konoha. Minato dropped Naruto onto the couch that he had in the office and then stared at him, one eyebrow raised while the rest of his face blank, waiting for an answer. Naruto was waiting on him to say something, but the quiet after a few moments was too much. He had never been very patient. "What?" Naruto asked impatiently. Minato just sighed at his son, and only after securing the silencing seals in the office he spoke. "Why did you turn Iruka-san in your classroom orange?" his father asked, massaging his forehead with his hand. Naruto almost laughed. He could remember old man Hokage doing that after many of his pranks. He contained himself though and answered,